Hi yogis, and welcome to Medicine for the Soul. My name's Allie, and today we will be moving through Friday Free Flow. Let's get started. Alright yogis, let's go into a child's pose towards the back edge of our mat. Alright yogis, to start, we will begin in a child's pose towards the back edge of our mats. So coming into this child's pose, knees go wide, toes to touch, hips sink back onto the heels, arms reach out in front of you, and forehead comes down towards your mat. Taking a deep breath in here, deep breath out. Arriving in the space. Letting go of any to-do lists or replaying of scenes from earlier today. Right now, it's your time to focus on you. It's your time to move your body and be curious about how you feel, how your body feels, how your mind is doing today. Go ahead and begin to walk those fingertips over towards the right side of your mat. Stretching across the left side of the body, maybe stacking that left arm on top of your right. Bring those hands back through center, and then go ahead and walk them over towards the left. Maybe that right arm stacks on top of the left. Feeling that stretch across the left side body. The right side body. Bringing those hands back through center. Take a full round of breath here in stillness. Before we begin, just remind yourself that it's okay to be kind to yourself and your body. And that if anything doesn't feel good in this class, you do not have to do it. No one is forcing you to do something that you don't want to do. Go ahead and press into the palms and the fingertips, really engaging through the arms so much that the elbows lift up off of the mat. We're going to move through kind of a different cat-cow variation than what we normally do here. As you inhale, you're going to press into your hands up towards tabletop, but your chin is going to be tucked in towards your chest, rounding and curling as if you're already in cat pose. Once you reach tabletop, breath out. You're going to arch that back, sits bones lift up towards the sky, gaze lifts, and look, you're in cow. Then you're going to simultaneously press your hips back into that child's pose. Once you're in that child's pose, take a deep breath in, chin tucks into your chest, rounding and pressing through the spine, cat-like with the back. And then on your next exhale, belly drops, gaze lifts, arching through the spine for cow, pressing those hips back towards child's pose. We're going to move through that a few times. Inhale, coming forward. Rounding through that spine. Exhale, sits bones lift up. Pressing yourself back towards your heels. 2 more like this. Inhale, coming up through cow. Really articulating the spinal movements here. Excuse me, coming up through cat, for cat pose, and then send your hips back for cow pose. Act as if you're moving fluidly through water. Chin tucks in towards your chest. And then exhale, send those hips back, arching through the spine. The next time you come forward, we're going to change it up a little bit. As you inhale, come up through your cat pose, chin tucks in towards your chest. But as you exhale, we're going to drop our hips down into a high cobra pose. So setting up here, legs can come out super wide, wider than your yoga mat if you feel any crunching in your lower back. Option here to take a slight bend in your elbows to bring your hip points closer down towards your mat. So this is going to be our flow here. We're going to come up through that cat pose and then drop our hips down into cobra, and then using the strength of our core, pull ourselves back up into that cat pose, rounding back towards child's pose. So let's move through that fluidly. Inhale, round and curl, pressing the mat away. And then exhale, hip points drop down, coming into that cobra. Maybe your gaze lifts. Good. Go ahead and press yourself back, rounding through the spine once more, child's pose. And then inhale, coming forward. Chin tucks into chest. Sending those hip points down, high cobra, and then sending those hips back. Great. All right, take a deep breath in, come forward into tabletop position, and we're going to tuck those toes, lift those knees, and send those hips up and back, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. If it's your first downward facing dog of the day, take a deep bend in those knees. Go ahead and walk your dog out. We're going to spend 3 breaths here. On your last exhale, find stillness and set yourself up to move into plank. Sometimes we have to widen our downward dog. We're going to continue that fluid-like spinal movement here. As you inhale, you're going to press forward into plank, but chin tucks into chest, coming up onto your high tippy toes, cat-like with the back. Come forward into plank. And then hips lead the way. You're going to want to lift your hips up first, maybe take a deep bend in the knees here, and press yourself back into downward facing dog. Inhale, coming forward into that plank pose, really rounding the spine. And then exhale, hip points lift up and back. Downward facing dog. Good. Let's do that a few more times. Inhale, coming forward into that plank pose, rounding through the spine. And then exhale, arching that spine, sending it back. Downward facing dog. One more time. Inhale, come forward into that plank position. Exhale, hips up and back. Breath in, breath out. Adding on, we're going to send ourselves into that plank pose, coming forward, except this time we're going to take floating dog, dropping those hips, keeping the toes tucked here. Chin tucks in towards your chest. If it feels good on the neck, you can lift your chin parallel with your mat. And then hips lead the way. Downward facing dog. 2 more times. Inhale, coming forward into that plank pose. Exhale, dropping those hips downward. Floating dog. And then we're going to move into downward facing dog. Hips lift up and back. All right. Last one, make it count. Really imagine that your spine is like a snake as you come forward into that plank pose. Then you drop down those hips for floating dog, keeping the toes tucked. And then exhale, downward facing dog. Great. Come up onto your high tippy toes, deep bend the knees, gaze looks forward at the top of your mat, step or float into forward fold. Feet come hips width apart here. And if you have blocks, go ahead and grab them. Place them on the lowest setting or medium setting so that you have a good foundation for your fingertips to tent up onto. So typically when we take a halfway lift, go ahead and lift up yourself halfway like you normally would. We want a flat back, gaze is down at the top of your mat. Exhale, go ahead and fold into your Uttanasana. Take a few breaths here. We're going to switch up that halfway lift. On your next inhale, lift up halfway and allow your hands to rest down onto those blocks here. Typically we press them in towards the shins. So we're going to arch the spine by sending the tailbone and sits bones up towards the sky, creating that arch in the spine. And then as you exhale, try and keep that same length as you press down your belly to thighs. It can be a lot. And if your legs are shaking like mine, that is totally normal. And then inhale, come up halfway, arch that spine, dropping the belly down, but still remaining engaged in the core. Take a deep breath in. Exhale, go ahead and drop down, belly to thighs, remaining and retaining that length in the spine. Good. All right. Toss those blocks off to the side. Allow yourself to just fully fold forward. Inhale, regular halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, root to rise, reach those arms up overhead and bring your hands down to heart center. Take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. Inhale, mountain pose, arms reach up overhead. Exhale, goalpost those arms, send your heart forward, take a back bend. Inhale, arms reach up overhead, mountain pose. Exhale, goalpost those arms, back bend. Last time, inhale, mountain pose. Exhale, swan dive forward, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, hands to plant, step those feet back into downward facing dog. Inhale, reach that right leg up high, bend the knee, open the hip, stack those hips while keeping your shoulders square. Draw little circles on the ceiling with your right knee. Go ahead and straighten the bend in that leg, square the hips down, and release that leg down towards your mat. Other side, go ahead and lift up that left leg, bend the knee, open the hip, square those shoulders, and draw little circles in the air with that knee. Go ahead and straighten that bent leg, square those hips down, and then release that left foot down. Inhale, high tippy toes, deep bend the knees, look forward at the top of your mat, step or float, forward fold. Deep breath in, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, root to rise, reach those arms up overhead, mountain pose. Exhale, goalpost those arms, send your chest forward, cracking open the heart for a back bend. Inhale, arms reach up overhead. Exhale, swan dive forward, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Go ahead and arch that spine. Try and maintain the length of that spine as you fold forward, Uttanasana. Hands come to plant. Step those feet back into downward facing dog. Inhale, reach that right leg up high and back. Bend the knee, square the hip. We're going to move into Wild Thing or Dancer's Bridge. So you're going to want to look underneath your left armpit for your right foot. Once you've caught sight of your right foot, come up light onto your right fingertips. And you're going to spin onto the knife blade edge of your left foot as you allow your right foot to drop down behind you. Press those hips up towards the sky, bicep by the ear. Move your hair out of your face if you have a lot of hair. Really focusing on lifting your hips. That will give you an arch in your spine. Good. To come out of it, you're going to lift that right leg up and bring yourself back into downward facing dog. Right hand to plant, right foot to plant. Inhale, high tippy toes, deep bend the knees, look forward at the top of your mat, step or float, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, root to rise, reach those arms up overhead, mountain pose. Exhale, goalpost those arms, take a back bend. Inhale, reach those arms up overhead. Exhale, swan dive forward, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant those hands, step those feet back into a plank position, moving through your vinyasa of choice. Inhale as you shift forward. Exhale, lowering down halfway or all the way. Inhale for your back bend, upward facing dog or cobra. And exhale, tuck those toes, send those hips up and back, downward facing dog. 3 breaths here. That's 1. That's 2. And that's 3. Go ahead and send that left leg up to the sky. Bend the knee, open the hip. I'm going to take Wild Thing on the left side, gazing underneath your right armpit, finding that left foot of yours. Tenting up onto the left fingertips, removing the weight from the left fingertips. Spinning onto the knife blade edge of your right foot, while simultaneously allowing your left foot to drop down. Arm reaches up overhead, pressing into those hip points, really arching through the spine here. You got this. To come out of it, same way as we did on the other side, you're just going to pick up that left foot, spinning around to downward facing dog, left hand to plant, left foot to plant. Inhale, high tippy toes, deep bend the knees, look forward at the top of your mat, step or float, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, reach your arms up over your head as you come up to standing. Mountain pose. Exhale, take your back bend. Inhale, reach those arms up overhead. And exhale, folding forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, press those hands, step those feet back to plank position, moving through your vinyasa as you shift forward. And then exhale, lower down halfway, chaturanga. Inhale, urdhva mukha, upward facing dog. Exhale, hips lead the way, downward facing dog. 3 breaths. We're going to add on. So go ahead and shoot that right leg up towards the sky, bending the knee, opening the hip here. We're going to move straight into Wild Thing. So dropping down that back foot, spinning onto the knife blade edge of your left foot. Right arm reaches up overhead by your bicep. 2 breaths here. Now we're going to see if we can move into Vashisthasana side plank from here. You're going to pick up your right leg and try and bring it to stack on your left. Hips are going to have to swivel so that they also come into a stacked position, maybe lowering a bit towards your mat. And then your arm reaches up overhead. Hold here, breathe. Option to come down onto one knee.
And then exhale, send your right hand down to plant, hips lead up towards the sky. Downward facing dog. Option here to take a vinyasa to clear the slate, or if you just want to rest in downward facing dog, be my guest. All right, we're going to move on to the other side. So go ahead and shoot that left leg up. We're going to open the hip, bend the knee, coming straight into wild thing. So dropping down that left leg, spinning onto that blade edge of the right foot, pressing your hip points up towards the sky, adjusting as needed if you kind of come off your yoga mat. Hold and breathe here. And we're going to try and come into side plank here. So picking up that left leg and stacking it on top of your right. You might need to adjust your hips here. And then your right arm reaches up towards the sky. 2 breaths. To come out of this, we're just going to bring our left hand down, sending those hips up and back into downward facing dog. Inhale, high tippy toes, deep bend in the knees. Bring your knees down to your mat at the exact same time. Hips sink back onto the heels. Hands collect into the lap. Closing down the eyes. Take account of how you feel right now in this moment. If you feel motivated, if you feel happy, productive, these are all good emotions to feel. If you feel like you're struggling or you're upset, try to let go of those emotions. Try to focus on the fact that you are right here working on yourself. Slowly flutter the eyes open. We are going to come into some counter pose stretching here. So coming onto your seat. Actually, I lied. We're going to come back into that child's pose here. So knees go wide, toes to touch, hips sink back onto the heels here. Arms reach out in front of you. If you have blocks, you might want to go ahead and grab them and bring them near you. We're going to take a bit of a tricep stretch here. So coming into this child's pose, you're going to bring your hands into a prayer position. And you're going to walk your elbows forward about a half step. Then you're going to bend at the elbows, bringing the palms of your hands behind the nape of your neck. So you should feel a stretch here. But if you don't feel anything, you can put your elbows onto blocks on the lowest setting, just making sure that you have enough room for your head to fit in between. So I'll demonstrate that really quick. Bring your elbows down, hands come into a prayer position, and then you're going to send them back over your head. And your head's just going to kind of hang down a bit. This feels quite intense. So this is a great option to do if you aren't really feeling anything and you would like to turn up the sensation. Either way, trying to breathe through it.
Last 2 breaths. Go
Go ahead and come up into tabletop position whenever you are ready, tossing those blocks off to the side if they were on your mat. We're going to come into puppy pose. So you're going to keep your hips lifted up in the air, but you're going to walk your knees back about half a step. Then you're going to keep walking your hands forward, keeping them straight out in front of you, and keep walking them forward until you find your chest dipping down. So it's kind of an extended version of what we were just doing. Once your chest dips down, maybe your forehead comes down to your mat or to a block. Being mindful, trying to keep those hips lifted. If you don't feel anything in this pose, you can just crawl your fingertips forward about an inch or two. You should feel this in the shoulders, the armpit area. Good. To come out of this, you're just going to come out the same way you came in, walking yourself back up to tabletop position. Coming to seated, we're just going to move on to our backs and get ready for Shavasana. So coming to lying down on your back, bringing the knees in towards the chest, hugging them in. Maybe rock your knees from side to side, massaging out that low back. Finding stillness. If you would like to take happy baby, here is your chance, bringing the knees out wide, grabbing for either the ankles, the knife blade edge of the foot, or maybe peace fingers around the big toes. Imagining that your knees are sinking closer and closer towards your mat. Go ahead. Bring your knees back in towards your chest, hugging yourself one last time. And just allow those legs to flop open, long in front of you, releasing any tension or grip that you have throughout your body. Palms face up for receiving energy, palms face down for grounding energy. Take what you need. Now you can choose to stay right here for as long as you need. Taking a full Shavasana is at least my advice. But if you have somewhere to be, slowly make your way up into a seated position, keeping the eyes closed. Once you're in that seated position, bring your hands in a prayer position in front of your heart. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you are feeling open and overall in a better mood. We bow forward to seal our practice. Namaste.